let's go into NoSQL databases now. So what is NoSQL? I would like to start by saying that this is one of the biggest misnomers in the IT industry. NoSQL doesn't mean we don't use SQL at all. All it means is that it's a flexible database which doesn't need a rigid schema. So it's more a no schema or schema-less database. So that is a very brief definition, if you will, of NoSQL, but actually there is, it's a little difficult to really define that. Now, all we can say is that the reason for NoSQL is big data. That is the reason I thought of starting off with big data. And in this slide, you will see that according to one of the surveys, companies were asked why people were moving towards NoSQL. I think one of the biggest problems was the lack of flexibility or the requirement of rigid schemas in case of traditional databases or RDBMS. The second problem, of course, was scale, the inability to scale out. So when the data grows drastically, scaling out is a big problem. And of course, third is the performance. So these are the three main causes for the introduction of NoSQL. So what are the advantages of NoSQL databases compared to a traditional RDBMS? The most important one is that it has a flexible schema. Schema-less, again, is a little controversial because there is actually an implicit schema, but what it means is that you don't have to start off with a schema. So traditionally in RDBMS, when you want to do a database design, you come up with the design of the tables and then the schema of the tables before you do anything else. So in case of NoSQL, that is not needed. I would also like to bring in a little bit of caution here that some of these concepts may be a little drastic in terms of paradigm shift, especially for those who are used to RDBMSs. So don't worry, it will need a little bit of reinforcement. So if you're not able to grasp everything, that should be fine. The second aspect, of course, is these NoSQL databases are highly scalable. Now, horizontal scalability is another jargon you will keep hearing. What it means is that typically when you feel your server is the size is not enough, one option for you is to increase the size of that server by putting in more memory or increasing the disk space or putting a more powerful CPU maybe. So that is typically referred to as vertical scalability. Horizontal scalability is the ability to add more machines. So that is all what is about horizontal scalability. So you can create a cluster of maybe 10 machines, so you get more scale and more power. And last but not least, as I mentioned, most of the NoSQL databases are open source, so pretty much free. So where do you use NoSQL databases, and why do we not use NoSQL databases everywhere? I think there are certain areas where NoSQL databases make a lot more sense. They are, again, not a solution to all problems, and certain areas where probably they will not be suitable. So NoSQL databases are suitable where there is continuous data coming in and it's in large volumes. For example, sensor data or Twitter data, log data, things like that. These are typical use cases where you use NoSQL databases. On the other hand, if you have some application which is very transactional, like for example, you need to create orders, you need to create customer details, and they're all linked to each other. Order is related to customer, and then order line items is related to order header, and so on. So RDBMS definitely is the best choice there. So what are the various types of NoSQL databases? Now there are a variety of NoSQL databases, and very often we will see that each one is quite different from the other. So it's sometimes very difficult to even bundle all of them together as NoSQL databases. But by and large, they have been categorized into 4 groups: the key value store, the column store, document databases, and graph databases. And key value store are further subdivided into persistent and volatile. You must have heard of in-memory. So volatile refers to the in-memory databases. So these are the 4 broad categories. Now we will go into a little bit more details of each of these categories. So quickly, a few examples of each of these, and I think we will cover some of these in a little bit more detail. So key value store examples of this type of NoSQL databases are Riak and Redis. And column family, probably the most common ones are HBase and Cassandra. And Datastax is a commercial version of Cassandra. And document databases, the most common or popular ones, in my opinion again, are MongoDB and CouchDB. And this is not a complete list. This is by no means a complete list, just for examples. And graph databases, probably the most popular one is Neo4j. And we will talk about it in a little bit more detail. So key value stores are based on Amazon's Dynamo, or Dynamo database. And as the name suggests, it has a very simple data model.